notice at this present time we are absent a few of our members. I'm hopeful that some will come in. I do believe, commissioners, that we currently do have a quorum to go forth with the meeting presently. I also need to make an announcement that one of our Commission on Ethics members is no longer a commissioner. He has resigned, and that was Commissioner Peory. So I needed to make that announcement so that when Madam Clerk reads the roll, that person's name will be absent from the roll at this time. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
State Attorney Ehrenberg, Public Defender Howitt, Commissioner Headley,
Present.
Vice Chair Cardell,
Present.
Commissioner Malfredo,
Present.
Chair Smith-Gordon.
Present. I hope that Mayor Vanna doesn't think that I broke her mic because this is not staying very stable. If anyone has a cell phone, as a friendly reminder, please quiet it or turn it off. I know that we all carry them. Commissioners, have you had an opportunity to review? There are two sets of minutes that we received to review. One that was from May 8th, 2014, when we had the opportunity to finalize our vote regarding our Inspector General, who is indeed our Inspector General, John Kerry. And of course, the latter would be our first meeting that we had in August 2014, when Inspector General Kerry held his first meeting. May I please have a motion for approval of the minutes from May 8th, 2014?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Cardell and seconded by Commissioner Headley to accept the minutes as recorded on May the 8th, 2014. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Ayes have it. I'm going to make the same request for a motion for the August 14th, 2014 meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved again by Vice Chair Cardell and seconded by Commissioner Headley. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. So therefore, August 14th, 2014 minutes is hereby approved. Agenda item number 5, the 6-month status report, presentation by Inspector General Kerry. Inspector General, please approach. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Testing.
Oh, sorry.
Let me see it. Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, honorable committee members. Today I'll be highlighting our OIG activities between October 1st, 2014 and March 31st, 2015. Please stop me at any time if you have questions or comments along the way. This is our outline, our roadmap where we're going today, the things we're going to be talking about. Of course, our mission is to provide independent and objective insight, oversight, and foresight in promoting efficiency, effectiveness, and integrity in government. And again, at the end of the day, ultimately is enhancing public trust in government. I'd like to put that kind of in another aspect, in more plain speak, insight in that we help good people make government better. We work with them to make government more efficient and effective. Oversight, and that we hold government accountable for resources and performance. And foresight, looking ahead and preventing fraud, waste, and abuse. And our responsibilities, these are our responsibilities out of the IG ordinance, to publish our reports, to meet with the Inspector General Committee every 6 months, and to publish our annual report by no later than December 31st of each year.
As we talk about that, I think it should be made clear that our meeting was at a different month in time, and it was changed to reflect, and actually I like it the way we've done it. It's still every 6 months, but in consideration of when you started, now it's going to be, if I remember correctly, what are we, May? May, and then
The last one be December.
December.
So I can promote or report on the last 6 months of the fiscal year, and also by December, we'll have our annual report for that whole year done. So we'll be able to not only give you the 6 months for that year, but also by that time we'll have the annual report finished, and so be able to also just kind of capsulize and answer questions as the whole year kind of comes together, the fiscal year.
All right, so that's why the change was made. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, and these are 3 divisions, and why I put them up there is because that's the order that I'll be briefing the activities in our intake and investigations, contract oversight, and then we'll talk about our audits.
Okay. We want to say good morning to Commissioner and the Public Defender, Carrie Howard. Thank you. That's okay.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to note in investigations and intake, that division, we hired in January Jeff Hemmel, who's here with us today, and Jeff is now the Director of Investigations and Intake. Highly recommended. He's got a great background. He was the Assistant Special Agent in charge for the Department of Labor, Office of Inspector General, Regional Office here of a multi-state area here in Florida. And another thing, he's got 30 years of investigative experience and supervisory experience in investigating labor, racketeering, fraud, white-collar crimes, and public corruption. So Jeff is a real catch to have, and he's been doing great things for us.
Okay, welcome to the Office of the Inspector General.
This slide talks about the overall general activities input that has come into the office over the past 6 months compared to the previous 6 months. So we had 400 number of calls that came in, and again, 121 written correspondence. And again, not all of those written correspondence are complaints. Like a good number of them are questions, concerns, asking for advice, and we help people. We point them to either the right organization that might help them out. We answer questions that we can, and so we handle a lot of other type of calls rather than just complaints that come in. And that shows the percent that did turn into complaints. And so out of those 86 were complaints, 71%. And when you do have a complaint in a file, oftentimes one call in will result in numerous allegations in that complaint.
Are the complaints, do we know who the complaints are? Are there citizens who are complaining, or who's making these complaints and these allegations?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I've got a large portion of our complaints come from citizens, and later on in the deck, I have a specific slide that'll describe where they come from. But a large portion of our complaints come from citizens. In fact, we'll talk later on. One of our cases which was just after this reporting period, it was significant enough that I put it in to talk about with Delray. It originally, years ago, came from a citizen complaining, coming to our office, talking about a contract that they were not, Delray was not bidding out a contract as they believe they should. And we looked into that and found that they should have been bidding it out. And years later, this is resulting in new city council did bid the contract out and saved the city of Delray millions of dollars.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just need to ask. Okay. And before you start, we want to recognize that we do have Commissioner and State Attorney David Ehrenberg, who is now present.
Morning, sir. That's a good segue to show down that 10 of those correspondences that came in led to investigations, and a number of these were referred to the State Attorney's Office, the Public Corruption Office, who we've worked with them on cases that turn into criminal matters. So a number of the complaints come in, then go over to the State Attorney's Office for investigations. And then we had 14 public records requests during that period. Total correspondence. Again, I know correspondence in the plural sense, that's not regularly used, but it is used sometimes. It's an IG term. It's usually a Florida IG term. puts that S correspondences in a rare form use because every correspondence that comes in gets a number, a correspondence number. And so when you have multiple, so that's kind of an IG term of reference, particularly other IGs in Florida. We've had questions on that, I know. So these are letters, emails, notes that come into our office requesting action. And again, they may be, again, a good number of them, they mostly are complaints, but they also are requests for assistance, questions, comments, in a number of different areas that comes into our office. And this category represents the subject, what the subject of the correspondence, what it relates to, not the source, not where they're coming from, but what the subject relates to, either the counties, the cities, the different areas that they may relate to. It's pretty consistent with the last 6 months.
What is other?
Yes, ma'am.
What is other?
Other, some of those, that's just another category. And those are some things like, for example, we get some that doesn't relate to any of ours. It wasn't ours that related to a state agency. So we get complaints sometimes or questions, and this really should go to one of the state agencies, so we refer it over to them. And when we do that, we send a note back to the individual so they know that it's going to the state agency or any other agency we refer it to. We send a letter to that agency that it's coming. We usually call them up and let them know that it's coming. And we'll also give the person who wrote the correspondence or complained, we'll give them a point of contact at the other agency so they don't have to fish around and find, if nobody gets back to them, where to call, who to call.
So basically it's something, for instance, that this office or your office does not have jurisdiction on.
Yes.
Okay.
And this relates back to your question, ma'am, about where these complaints come from. And you can see the majority of our complaints that come into the office come from citizens. And so that's where, again, we get a lot of our work in. And again, like the one time they result in some very good actions. And we talked before the meeting, and what we're going to institute is anytime a citizen does complain to our office and it results in some significant action or an investigation, we'll make sure and follow up with that citizen to let them know that because of your initiation, here's the ultimate outcome of this. There was an investigation. There was something that positively happened because of your input. So we're going to start doing that.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yes. So government would include employees of
Yes.
counties or cities?
Yes, the counties, the cities, and also government is Children's Services Council and Solid Waste Authority.
But so those are the complaints coming from the actual employees of government?
Right, yes. Now, probably a lot of those complaints from government too are in the anonymous category. So the anonymous category, we don't know where they're coming from, but I would, in my experience, from my past experience, and I think from what the little I've seen here in the past year, I think a good number of those come from people in government who, for a number of reasons, don't want their identity revealed. Top correspondence, just an idea of some of the top, the correspondence come in related to what county departments, fairly consistent with the past. And again, correspondence is not necessarily a complaint. It's just sometimes it's a question. Sometimes they're indirect. For example, with the county council, they have questions sometimes as the county council is doing something or voted on something, and the question, can they legally do this? And so sometimes it's kind of an indirect, it's maybe a semi-complaint. So we answer that if we can answer that. No, that's fine, or if it may lead into a complaint.
There's a new category here, community services. That was not there for the prior 6 months.
That was the previous 6 months was community services. We had some.
I'm looking at the reverse. Okay.
We had some correspondence. So these just are an example of the top categories that we had. Some of the larger categories where we had correspondence coming in. In this 6 months, we didn't have any correspondence to the significant level above 3 that came in related to community services.
Okay.
some of the top cities where correspondents come in. Again, it's fairly consistent. Again, you can compare that to the last 6 months of some of the cities that complaints have come in. And oftentimes they come in droves where sometimes there's a number of citizens who are speaking together. Some reason, well, why would there be such a larger number? Again, sometimes citizens are speaking together and both citizens separately lodge complaints. So that could be a reason why on the same issue there could be a rise in complaints or correspondence questions. The types of allegations that came in broad categories. Again, it's fairly consistent with what we've received in the last 6 months. And employee misconduct can be anything from theft of time, allegations of bribery, violations of policies, contract improprieties. They relate to the cone of silence, public notices that they complain they didn't give proper public notice. Financial improprieties could be things like fraud, mismanagement, abuse of allocations of funds, and then again, theft is things like theft of city properties, theft of county property, personal improper use of government credit cards and things like that. So those type of categories.
Before you go further, you've got a category called financial improprieties in the current 6 months, but a segregation of perhaps a subset of that in the prior 6 months in the bottom two categories: falsification, omission, misrepresentation, and misuse of property and personnel. From my point of view as a forensic investigator, have you recategorized these older two categories?
No, we haven't recategorized them. I think last time there was some clear distinctions. Enough of a clear distinctions that we broke them out into two categories. So these categories are general categories that we use to brief, and within our files we usually, we keep them in loose categories, so they adjust according to how many they are each 6 months. We look at the types of allegations that came in, and then we try to characterize those. So this is a characterization as those come in that we can present them to kind of give you an idea of the types of things we're getting. So last time, I'd have to go back and look at this from last time actually to see, but I think it was because it was some clear distinctions. There were 3 and 3, so we thought, okay, we'll break it out and put it. But I'll go back and check and get back with you on that.
Okay, because I think the misuse of property, as somebody who teaches fraud investigation, probably would fall into financial impropriety, at least in my class.
Yes.
And falsification, omission, or misrepresentation, I think it would be dependent on the subject matter. Just asking.
Oh, this is good. If you don't mind, I'll follow up with you personally too on some ideas. Thank you. Now, particularly, we're going to talk about the investigative unit and some of the things that they've done comparing this month or this 6 months to the last 6 months. You've issued one report, which we'll talk about here specifically in a minute. But of note, like I mentioned before, the cases initiated by the OIG, either audits or investigations, were referred to the Public Corruption Unit in the State Attorney's Office. So there's a great relationship that we have with the State Attorney's Office, the Public Corruption Unit, and a lot of things that we get in. I think I should ask my committee member here to confirm that or not, but we believe we've got a great relationship, and a lot of things turns over, and we work with them very closely.
State Attorney Ehrenberg.
True.
You'd make a good witness.
I don't know if you've ever said some little words. I do have a question here. That's a startling difference in the question in identified costs. That's huge.
Yes, it is. A number of times in investigations, the nature of investigations that we look at, a lot of times it all depends what comes in the chute. Sometimes we investigate issues. For example, like the recent investigation we did on the county personnel, that there was no money that was found that was put in any of the categories of question. It was about improper personnel actions. So sometimes we investigate just somebody whose allegations of improper personnel actions or procedure actions that we will look at, and so it really didn't have a dollar value associated with that. And so when allegations come in and issues to investigate, obviously if something is a big dollar potential loss, that would create an investigation. And but during this last 6 months, there was not allegations that came in or things that were referred to us from our audit division to the investigation that had any of those larger dollar items, questionable or identified costs that might be associated with it.
I have a question also. I'd like you to help me understand the relationship between the corrective actions, recommendations made, and those that were implemented. I see that none were implemented. Is this category of the implementation related strictly to the recommendations made in the current 6 months, or is this just none were made, no implementations were made at all?
This was in the current 6 months. So these numbers particularly are for that 6 month period. In the green column, which is 0, there were no implemented recommendations for investigations. There were for audits and other categories, but there were none for the investigations during that period.
Okay, so it strictly relates to the number 3 above it.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
And later on in the brief, we'll have an overall, I believe, chart. I believe I have a chart that talks about recommendations overall and then implementation percentage.
I have questions when we get there too.
Okay, good. Thank you. Again, this is the case that was investigated, that issued in December by the investigation unit. This case was referred to them by our audit division. And this is another good example of how even within the office, all the 3 divisions work very closely together. The auditors were conducting an audit of Riviera Beach. They found some irregularities beyond the scope of just in the audit world of regularities that might indicate fraud or something of an improper individual activity. So they referred that to the investigative unit, and the investigators took over. And what they found was the city department director misused his purchase card to lease vehicles, even though the city vehicles had been returned to him in operating condition. And we also found that the city department director further falsified the monthly expense reports in order to obtain the city manager's continued approval so he could continue renting these leased vehicles. Now, the city is in the current process of reviewing it. Again, we issued this report in December 30th. We've been following up consistently with the city. They have hired an attorney to review the case to make a recommendation to them what actions they should take. But frankly, I am concerned that since this department director had stated, and within the city we've checked, he stated that he may retire in August. So we're concerned that we're getting close to his retirement date and no action has been taken. So what I'm going to do, if I don't get anything, I'll put him on notice. I'm going to give a formal now letter to them, copy the entire city council and other folks to let them know we need to take care of this before this individual retires.
I've got a question. I think I realize that this office does not have a penalty kind of imposition, but we do have a state attorney dais, and we have, of course, Al Johnson, who heads a specific unit at the state attorney's office. What remedy is there other than doing a letter? Does this office take in pursuit of matters similar like this or similar to this?
Yeah, like this. Thank you. That's a good question, and often comes up in public gatherings when they're asking me. They say, "IG, you really don't have any authority. I can't collect money from people. I can't arrest people. We have the power of the pen to send it. We ratchet it up not only to the city administration, we ratchet it up. We send it to the city council, and also we also give our notices to the press, and we have a very large mailing list of individuals who are concerned and about IG matters. They like to hear about IG matters, and we would issue a letter, something like this, to not only the city but let the public know what the situation is. So then public pressure, if needed, that part of democracy can start working. If they are they going to accept that from their city? So that's our venue and the way we ratchet it up. We have no authority ourselves, which also relates to kind of a separate issue we'll talk later on about saving money that comes up, the IG and saving money. And I say that we do save money, but we have to qualify that. The IG, in all of our recommendations, we've made recommendations for millions of dollars in identified costs that can be recovered, in cost avoidance, that if they accept our recommendations in the future years, that we, just like what happened in Delray recently, they accepted the recommendations and took action on them, and we're going to save millions of dollars in the next 6 years because of it. But the IG, we save money in the sense of our recommendations and our findings, if accepted and acted on, saves money for the taxpayers, because I don't have the authority to go collect money or to make people do good business practices, but in many ways they do it, and we prove that and follow up.
City Attorney Ehrenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. IG, what about turning over documents to the Ethics Commission, some of your investigations? Can you go into that?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question, and we do just recently. We've done that with a number of cases. Anytime there's ever an issue that involves that we see any question that involves part of our ethics code and involves the Ethics Commission business, we refer that over to the Commission on Ethics. So we refer things over to them often, and a number of times they'll refer things over to us. So we also work very well with Steve Collin and company and refer things back and forth.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would this investigation qualify for that?
I don't believe it does, but I'll check. I don't believe this does. There were some other ones recently that did, that we referred to them, but that's a good one. They receive copies of all of ours. So Steve receives copies of all of these, but I'll check with him on this particularly.
Please.
The fact that the Ethics Commission and Mr. Cullen receives the copies of all your investigations, so
sure.
That sort of answers my question. I guess that they can take it up on their own.
Yes.
So essentially, you do refer everything to them, and that you send them all your investigations.
But specifically, if we do know, well, in addition to just getting a copy and saying, well, there it is, read it, we will specifically note if we see something in the memo, and we'll coordinate, talk to them about the issue that we think may. So we'll do that in addition to the copy.
Was that done in this case regarding Riviera Beach?
In Riviera Beach, I'll have to check to see. I'm not sure. I don't believe Riviera Beach at the time that we did this. We did with the Public Corruption Unit. We worked with them on this, and they declined to prosecute. And there's a number of different reasons. I'm asked that. They have to meet the bar of going to court, convincing a jury to take things on, and with a number of different issues involved. So there's a number of reasons why they may or may not take cases. But we did with the Public Corruption Unit, but I'm not sure with the Commission on Ethics. But I'll double check on that, and I'll get back with you. And we certainly will now.
I think that's important because public perception is important. I'm sure we all hear questions and that we cannot answer when we're in Publix or wherever else. So when these matters come before us now every 6 months, and they can be addressed, so we can some kind of way announce that what actions have been taken, what remedies have been forwarded, that would, I think, be a very good thing to do.
Now we're going to talk about contract oversight. And before I get into that, that's headed also, my general counsel, Rob Beitler, who's here, is also the head of the division, but his deputy, Dennis Yeske, is here with us, who is the nuts and bolts person who's really working the issue. Dennis is doing a great job on this. And Rob, not to take away from Rob, you're giving general overall direction, but Dennis is the one who takes the staff and really does a lot of the great work. And so he is going to, in fact, when Rob leaves, and I'll speak about this later at the end of June, Dennis is going to take over the division. So I already said it, so I might as well talk about it. When I came into the office, Rob had retired already once from state government and came down here with Cheryl Stegler to help set up the office with her. When I came in, we had a conversation, and he promised me that he'd stick with me for a year to help me get my feet on the ground. But then he's going to move at the end of June. He's going back to Tallahassee, where he's from with his wife, to settle down and really retire. So I thank Rob for sticking around with me and helping me out this first year. But it's time for him to go back home and settle down. Okay, just a little review of what this office does. Again, this office is our proactive office that goes out proactively to promote efficiency and to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. And again, they're often the unsung heroes behind the scene who is going out there. They're like the patrolman on the street who's out and about, looking around, giving advice. Again, looking for things that they may either give advice or sometimes give warning, or to bring other areas back in. So they oversee all the procurement activities in the county and the municipalities and the agents we oversee. They monitor over 24, and this is about, again, over $1 billion worth. And the meetings they attended during this period was 56. And here's some of their activities. Reports they issued was 2. The recommendations they made. Question identified costs and the avoidable costs, 0. And again, these numbers in all categories, when we compare them, not only investigations, contract oversight, and audits, we're looking for the dollars and cents. But oftentimes, the nature of what we find, particularly in contract oversight or audits, it may be less. Sometimes that may be a good thing. Let's see.
Is that because there have been some actions and some conversations with different city managers or about the various issues that presented 6 months before or 12 months before that have improved? Is that
correct? Sometimes we go in and do an audit or an oversight activity, and they're doing well. And that's great. So in one sense, from a metric, and this is classic in the IG business, I know at all levels. It's semi-like in policing. If a good police department reduces crime and statistics looks lower, then people start thinking, are you doing your job? Because you're not arresting back. No, we've done it. We've prevented an atmosphere where there is crime. So that may represent good things, but they're very difficult statistically to find out, is that good or bad? That just because their numbers are up and down do not necessarily mean you did better or worse. It's part of the job that we're always looking for. Now we're going to talk about those 2 cases, 2 reports that the contract oversight issued. First was on Riviera Beach. And again, this came from a anonymous complaint about the city. We did find a good thing that the city was complying with the requirements of the State Law and Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act when entering into contracts with engineering firms. However, they did not comply with the state law when entering into contracts with surveying firms.
How do you know, just out of curiosity, when you get an anonymous complaint, you did give us statistics earlier about those, but how do you know which one to pursue and what not to pursue?
Yes, thank you. That is a great question that I'm often asked also. Every complaint that comes in, the first thing we do is look for jurisdiction, of course, and if not, we'll refer it to where it needs to go. But considering it's our jurisdiction, then we do an initial assessment of that complaint. And we look at the complaint to see what evidence the complainant gave us with that. So if they just give a complaint that, this may sound funny, but this is not uncommon. The county council, the complaint is they're crooks and have improper relationships with certain people who are bidding on a county contract. But they get no evidence. So that one, if we have the complainant's name, we go back to them and ask them, what evidence do you have? Oftentimes we get, well, you know it because everybody knows. And I tell them, well, we can't do anything with everybody knows. I have to have one piece of evidence that you saw somebody speaking with that vendor, that you saw money change, you have documents, but just because, so we separate the suspicion and which are suspicions, and sometimes may be legitimate or not, so we separate them out, and so we then work, again, back to the evidence. Did you give us any evidence or realistic arguments behind that just allegation? And so we evaluate that with the risk factors involved to determine how we're going to investigate that.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you so much.
And then we had another, and this was a citizen's complaint, highlighting again, a lot of our complaints come from citizens and work that we do come from citizens here. Again, on Riviera Beach, it was not there 6 months. Unfortunately, a lot of folks coming in and complaining on Riviera Beach the last 6 months. And in addition, we were doing the audit, so it did kind of bad timing for Riviera Beach. But we found in this that the city repeatedly allowed a vendor to continue working after the contract expired, which resulted in the city council passing retroactive resolutions. And the city didn't ensure that the monthly invoices and the progress reports were submitted as required by the professional services contract. And we made recommendations for corrective actions, and the city has begun implementing all of our recommendations.
For that situation, would it have mattered if the contract would have been renewed, or was there a requirement that that contract go out for bidding?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. In this case, they had authority to renew the contract. So sometimes in some cases, they don't, it's time to rebid the contract. In these cases, they could have renewed them, they just didn't. And so it's like they weren't keeping proper procedures and to do it. So they could have done it, they weren't. They were letting it go without a contract.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about audit. And while we're talking about audit, a lot of personnel changes. Our director of audits, Dennis Schindel, recently returned to his family in Maryland, and he came and helped stand up the office and did a great job standing up. But because of family circumstances, both of his daughters, instead of graduating, what he thought they may be dispersed or come down maybe even to Florida, they both got jobs back close to his hometown. So him and his wife decided to move back to Maryland to be with his family. So we're currently in the process of interviewing some folks for the director of audit to come in. A number of folks we've looked at. Right now, the audit manager is the acting division director, Eleanor Lazansky, who's here with us right now, doing a very good job, holding things together and pushing forward and doing a really good job. And so, anyway, so we're in the process of interviewing candidates to come in to fill that position. Here are the activities from the audit department. Made a lot of recommendations. Again, most of them related to, we'll talk about Riviera Beach. We'll talk about that in a minute. So here's the overall activities compared to the last 6 months in audit. One of the things, again, this is a good news story. Here's one of the audits they did, was on Children's Services Council Information System Management. And good news that we found out that their information security management system is well managed, well controlled, and however, anytime IGs go in, we find ways to make good things better. So this is a good example of good people doing good things, but they asked for us to come in here, and we talked about this, and we made recommendations to make their program even better. And they've taken corrective, the actions that we recommended, they've taken since we were there.
Can I ask a quick question? You indicated that they asked for you to come, you meaning your office, to come in. Do you go into situations only when you're requested, or is it sometimes simply because it is a random audit?
Thank you. On how we determine what we're going to audit is through a variety of mechanisms. First of all, we try to develop an annual plan based on some type of risk assessment, and I'll talk about that. We're trying to refine our risk assessment for the future, but you work up an annual plan, and it's based on risk, how much, what's the past history, what's the money that's being spent, what's the oversight in place, the control mechanisms in place. So that's built a number on our risk assessment, and then going out and asking and talking to the different organizations what they see as high-risk areas or areas that may benefit from our audits. Sometimes they'll answer the questions, though not asking for an audit, but give us the information that makes it clear we should. So some of them we self-initiate by a risk assessment. Some of them we do get requested to come and look at them. A lot of times, like a new city manager, often the new person in place will come and ask us to look at certain things to give them an outside perspective. So some of them do come from a self-initiated. Others come from complaints, sometimes from complaints from within or citizens' complaints that all of a sudden this is significant enough of problem, again, and where we did that initial analysis of the complaint and allegation from a variety of sources, inside or outside, that we determine, okay, this may require an audit instead of an investigation because it's a more systematic issue. So there's a wide variety of ways that we come in. And oftentimes, this is not uncommon at all levels of IGs. You start out with an annual plan. I have never completed my annual plan in auditing, because there's usually always something as you have these things, audits planned out for the year, that complaints will come in or higher issues. Management will come to you and ask you to audit something, and then you go back to the plan and you see, then you reevaluate where would we get the best benefit of doing the audit. So a lot of times you adjust your plan and shift, and that's very common with IGs, that they'll shift that annual audit plan, and sometimes at the end of the year it looks very little like what you had planned to do at the start of the year. And again, since we have very limited resources, again, we've only had 8 auditors, so the very limited resources that we have, we sometimes just things are put off and have to be put off to the next year. But this is a good story. There's no money involved. It's an audit. There's a lot of effort involved, but it paid good benefits for the activity and the organization that we audited. Now the next one, again, this did involve a lot of money. A question cost $880,000 plus of question cost, and some potential avoidable costs, over $1 million with Riviera Beach. And the main issue there was, and we had so many recommendations in that, the issue was mainly internal controls needed improvement, in a number of areas, and we found money in a number of different areas that one needed better, and the question cost often needed better accounting for better stewardship of how we're accounting for the citizens' taxpayers' dollars. In the areas of contracting, purchase requests, we found segregation of duties was a big issue that you need to segregate duties as a good internal control that was not being done. Purchase cards, utility payments, fuel. Again, we made 38 recommendations. 34 of them were accepted. 13 have already been implemented. And I told this to the city when I was briefing, and I say to the public that the city was very cooperative with us during the audit. In fact, along the way, they had been making corrections and better practices along the way. So I commended them that they didn't just wait till after the report's issue and started right along the way as we're working with them, and they saw corrective actions need to be taken. Some of the things we found and weaknesses they had already identified and were taking, or they had planned to take corrective actions. So sometimes when we identify things, because they still are not fixed or not right, we still identify them, even though a common question we have by some folks without it, well, we already knew that was broken. I know, but it still is broken, and we have to identify, and that's good. I know you know it was broken and you plan to fix it, but we still are going to note this so it's now a public record that it's down there, and then we'll do a follow-up to see that it is fixed. So very positive, and again, some good things they've done about they've hired a new contract administrator, they've hired an internal auditor, which is big. Very few of our cities have internal auditors, and so that is a good thing that's really going to help Riviera Beach out in the future. And this is kind of our overall what we accomplished during the last 6 months compared to what we've done to date as an office. And I will add in there, I have the recommendations that we've made, but I do not have in there the recommendations that have been implemented. It's on our website. It's not here, but right now I believe we're at around 94% of our recommendations since we've been in, we track this, how many have been implemented. It's around 94% of our recommendations that we make are accepted and are implemented, which is very good. And that's the reason why that's very high is because once we identify problems or areas that can be improved, we work with government, with the people in doing the business, and we try to work with them to come up with a realistic either solution or a better way ahead. So it's not like we make this up ourselves. We work with them to try and come up with what is a good recommendation. So as a result, we get a high level of acceptance of our recommendations. Now, I'm going to give a couple other reports that came out just after this reporting period, just because they were significant. So you'll see them in the next 6-month period, but I thought they were significant enough and they've been in the news that I thought you should know about them. And the first one was our investigation on the county engineering department. And again, even though the recommendations were not supported, and I had to put a qualification box in that report to kind of explain this, because some of the things when the average reader read that report, their eyes would kind of get big and ask the question, "You're kidding me." And so even though sometimes IGs find that allegations are not supported, that still doesn't mean everything is right. And so sometimes, like in this case, we still point things out, identify them, and we make recommendations. And so we made some recommendations in this area to the county. And I think I've got, in the next slide, I'll describe that. And they accepted all of our recommendations and took into the counties, on their behalf, they took immediate action on policies and personnel to take action. So they agreed with us. So that's this investigation we did. And here are some of the actions, corrective actions that we identified, recommended for action. action for the county. And that they changed their policies, changed some of the policies, the way they were doing, removed the person who was on the chair of the committee at the time. The county engineer eliminate the preliminary shortlist and just put everybody in the way that they should be, for better transparency for vendors who are coming in. Because when they were on the short list, the vendor could not come in and see why I was not moved on, because they weren't keeping records that identified. So now the vendors, and again, I've had this one, even though again it has not made the news, a lot of news, I've had a number of calls from business people in the community, cold calls of people I've never met, telling me how significant they thought this was and how this is a good report, that they felt that this shows transparency now, better transparency for business folks trying to bid and make bids with the county. And again, the county's taking action on all of these, and we'll follow up on that. Here's another report that came out, contract oversight notification that goes all the way back to March of 2012, where again a citizen came in and complained and talked about some issues on the way they were letting contracts in Delray Beach. We looked into it. We recommended that the city they need to bid out a contract that was coming to the end of the solid waste contract, as per their own city charter required it. The city council did not accept our request. They gave a bid. They gave the contract to the same company that was doing the business. New city council came in. New electorate council came in. They went to court. They agreed with the IG's recommendations, so they went to court. They had a judge. A judge ruled that the contract was not a valid contract because it violated their own city ordinance, and so they were able to rebid the contract. And in rebidding the contract for a new company, which starts June 1st, they will avoid $9 million over the next 6 years of that contract from what they were paying in the past. All bidders, even the incumbent contractor, bid lower than what they were in the past contract. So not all, there was one that was over. So I think four out of the 5 contracts bid lower. So we always tell folks, and it's in the news, I said it's pretty basic. It's like in personal finances. When you shop around, you're usually going to get a better deal. And so we always recommend going out and competing. And here's a good example of what competition does. And again, the other...
Is that for the exact same job and exact same responsibilities as previously?
They believe they're similar. They're going to watch this to see if it is, but that it is. Some of the folks argue they don't think it's going to be the same services. But however, even the incumbent doing the same thing bid lower than what?
But if he comes instead of, say, 3 days and only comes 1 day, then that's a significant difference.
So they're going to follow up on that. So,
General Carey.
Sir.
As you know, there are generally accepted auditing standards and there's generally accepted accounting principles, and contained within all those are some pretty tightly worded definitions. If I found an Inspector General dictionary, what would be a well-phrased definition of an avoidable cost?
Okay. In fact, I have a paper here. Let me make sure. Avoidable cost. Here's what you will usually find in the most of the Inspector Generals at the federal level, which we used and used out here. Avoidable costs are dollars an entity will not have to expend and or the increase in revenue, and in this case, over the next 6 years. In the federal government, they usually do it in the fiscal cycle, 5 years. So without a contract, which this was a contract, so they'll do it within the time period. So they'll use 5 years usually in the federal government, if not a contract. We usually use 3 years in our office down here, but in this case where there's a specific contract you can tie it on. So that's what it is. Avoidable costs are dollars an entity will not have to expend and or the increase in revenue. Future.
Okay. So is part of that underlying definition based on the chair's question regarding the similarity of services? Is it considering that whatever you're buying, whether it's goods or services, are materially similar?
Yes. Materially similar.
Okay.
And in this case, it's materially similar to what the contract was. So,
okay, thank you.
Now we'll talk about training and outreach. Let's start off with, in March was National Ethics Awareness Month. And this month we partnered with both Steve Collin with the Commission on Ethics and also Kim Ardella-Morgan with the Center for Applied Ethics on a number of initiatives and events that went on during March. I got to be a judge up at the top right at the 4th Annual High School Ethics Bowl. And that's a great event that's been going on where you have high schoolers come in and you give them ethical issues to talk about. And it's just not about ethic issues that happens in high school. Some of them are world situations that they talk about. Is it ethical for a poor country to spend millions of dollars to have the Olympics come to them when it's not going to benefit the people who are poor and starving? And so they discuss and have teams that pick an issue and they debate, and it's very good for high schoolers. I think this would be a great debate for a lot of us adults to go to things like this. So it was a great event to be able to participate and judge it. So,
Do you remember which high schools they were?
no, I
To put you on the spot like that.
Good.
I judged it also this year. The final round was Boca Raton, and last year was Boca Raton and Lake Worth. Lake Worth actually won. This year Boca won, but the final round was between them and I'll remember it in a second. But it's a lot of different schools from the area. You would be so impressed when you see these kids. They're really amazing, and they talk not just about ethics but about philosophy, and they apply Immanuel Kant's theories to ethics and utilitarian theories, and it's really remarkable.
Oh, I'm proud of our county. All right.
Great. And then they go on to state competition, the winners, and then there's a national competition that eventually takes place. So it's a great event. Good for our students. Good for, again, everybody who participates. I'm sorry I didn't see you there.
I was at the final round, and you were probably doing the
day before. Yes.
Yeah, the day before.
I started low. Maybe I'll work up to that.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, we're there with just give credit Chuck Shaw. He judges. Paulette Burdick is there, and I think Shelley Vanna was there. It was a really good turnout. So I encourage you all to do it next year. You'll leave very impressed.
Thank you.
It's a good event. Had a lot of speakers that came in, spoke on a lot of things. I had my whole shop, all of my the supervisors of my shop all came to the event. They had a 4-hour event on ethics and leadership, and that was good. So there's a number of different things that they had speakers come in, and it was a very good month. And the poster on the left, that's a poster that Steve Collin and I came up with for the county, and so we distributed this poster throughout the county, the cities, and all the agencies that we provide oversight to for that month to bring awareness to Ethics Awareness Month. These are the folks that we keep track of, the folks that we go out and speak to. The majority, almost without exception, there's a few exceptions there, but all of these numbers are numbers that I personally speak to. I'm the people, when I go out in public and they often say, who's your public relation or public information officer? I say, I am. That's my main job. So I get out and I make it a point to speak to people inside government, outside government. You see we have media contacts and interviews. And again, education, I'll note some of the education publications that we put out over the past 6 months. My talk is pretty standard. It has a variation dependent on the audience. But what we do, we speak to, oftentimes in the government, we talk about best practices and lessons learned and some of the things we're doing. And then usually outside to everybody, we talk about who we are, what we do, some of our activities. And everybody we speak to, it's usually we solicit input from them. What do you think? How do you do? Is there any area that we should be looking? Is there anything we should be doing differently? I say it's like I try to use old Mayor Ed Koch from New York when he used to walk around the city and ask people, the citizens, how am I doing? And that's what we do at the end. We ask for input. And again, I take that independently. There's nobody who votes. There's nobody who committees. Independently, they provide input, and I take that for consideration. And if it's worthy, we put that into practice. Some of those were from citizens that talked about my next slide about more public type outreach, more written type of communications. And these are some of the type of things that we put out over the past 6 months. We've had our newsletter we put out, and again, that's to the general public, that's in and out of government. Of course, our annual report. We started these tips and trends about just basic 1 to 2 page lessons learned that we try to anonymize whoever we investigated or audited, if it's a good lesson that other either municipalities and sometimes just people out in business should take away and apply to their business. I've put information out in our county line newspaper, and also I've got a 30 and 60 minute commercial public awareness commercial about the Office of Inspector General goes out every now and then on our county channel 20 TV. It's on our website. It's out there we're even on YouTube, so you can see us on YouTube now. How about our budget and staffing? In this chart, maybe there's a lot of information on this, but the information is on the left is really about our budget. So that's the bottom line. Our budget, the information's on the left. $2.8 million. As you know, we're structured at 40, but because of the lawsuit, we're capped at 23 people currently. We have 20 people on hand. Right now we have 3 vacancies. The vacancies are for the Director of Audit, an Auditor 3, our Senior Audit position, and an Auditor 2 level position that we have out being advertised. And I put that in there on the right side, just an idea for what the county, the cities, Children's Services, and Solid Waste Authority, what we do with those 23 or now 20 people. You know, again, we oversee 13,000 people. These organizations, multi-billion-dollar budgets, billion-dollar contracts, and again, right now we've identified, I'm sure there's more, 788 auditable units. So when we get those other folks, we've got plenty of work to do. There's a lot of work out there to do, and I was asked the other day, we're just scratching the surface, and we've got a lot of great work to do for the citizens of Palm Beach County.
The current funded positions versus the current on-hand personnel, the difference is 3. Is that because we lost someone or some
Yes,
people?
Yes, attrition. And auditors are, again, it's hard to find auditors. It's a tough skill, so I've tried to enlist one of the commissioners here to help me find some good auditors.
I can't find them for me.
So, we're really got a good crew we have, but it's a small crew, and we're really looking to find some more auditors.
You're still missing the general counsel?
No, we've got that's Rob. He's leaving at the end of June. Yeah, he's leaving at the end of June.
I'm not trying to push you out sooner than you want to go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's leaving at the end of June, and we're doing interviews these next few weeks. We've done some this week, and we're going to continue into next week and try to have some overlap for Rob.
Thank you.
Okay, the lawsuit update. Again, as you all know, that currently, go to this slide. There's a lot of activity during this 6 months, but unfortunately, we're still kind of where we were. The judge ruled in favor of the county, stating that her words were, "The people are the municipalities. The officials who represent the people may not undermine the electorate process because they disagree with the vote of the people." And she stated this eliminated the discretion of municipalities and avoid funding. So she ruled in favor of the county to fund the IG. The cities then came back in March 26th and asked for the judge for a rehearing. The judge denied that, and so where we stand right now, the cities are appealing to go through the appeal process now. So we are, as far as effect and manpower, we're still at 23 and will remain 23 until this is resolved. Okay, where we're going as an office. Again, we're going to continue to work on our risk assessment. Our goal is to have a good risk assessment done by the end of this fiscal year for next fiscal year 16. So we had to do a stop. We were working on this. We had to stop in progress because of some personnel who left. We had to shift Eleanor over to working on the audits instead of working on the risk assessment. So we put that on hold for a while. As soon as we get some more folks back in, we're going to pick that up and continue to try to do a more refined risk assessment to work to target our audits and activities. On investigations, again, bringing Jeff Himmel here. He's got a great background to look for his experience in looking for anomalies and red flags for investigators. And again, our goal, what you do in good investigation is again, I don't want to say we haven't been doing this, but we want to improve our ability to look out for red flags and for areas we may need to do some initial inquiries that may turn into investigations. So good IGs just don't wait for the phone to ring for an allegation to come in to investigate, or for somebody to call. They're out there themselves constantly looking at areas that there may be high risk in themselves, and not just waiting on the audits to do it, but themselves. So Jeff brings some good skills, and we're working on that more. And then in contract oversight, we've geared my good unit, what I've talked about, the good folks, those unsung heroes that goes to the meetings. I'm trying to focus more on outcomes and not just output. In other words, I liken it to a patrolman. I go back to my policing days. A patrolman who drives around, I'm trying to make sure that that we're directing the patrols in the higher risk areas and in the best areas where the outcome may be better than going up and down a road where there's not as much crime or potential problems. So we're really trying to focus the very small unit that we have on the areas where they're going to get a higher payoff for the government. So we've been working on fine-tuning where we're going with the contract oversight unit. Continuing, other things we're continuing is our internal government awareness initiatives, our meetings with stakeholders, business and city managers, and our citizens outreach. And so we're going to continue doing that. And again, I tell everybody, I speak to anybody, anywhere, if they call me up to talk about what we're doing, to talk about the things we're doing, and to receive input from the county so we get more people to know about what we're doing inside the government to make government better, and outside so they can help us make government better. And two, if somebody knows if something's not being done right, well, I'm the office that they should be calling to potentially take action on that. During this period, we had our on-site assessment for the accreditation of the office from the Commission on Florida Law Enforcement Association. The office was accredited, and I want to make a special note to Flora Butler, who is our accreditation manager on that. She did a great job in making sure she was the one who had our first accreditation flawless, and this was a reaccreditation that we do. They do every 3 years, and so we were accredited again. Again, we received a flawless report from that. We're scheduled in August now for a peer review from the National Association of Inspectors General. And they will conduct a peer review of all the various different areas of the office. I've had a mock peer review. I've had a fellow IG officer outside of our office, one of the state IG officers, come in and do a mock peer review of the office within the past month, just to give me an idea of where we sit, how we doing. And he said from what he observed during his period that he would give us a thumbs up and he would rate us at the highest level. Again, like anybody else, we have things to correct in our, at least our audit area, but he said he would give, from what he's seen, the highest level of rating. So I'm confident going into the peer review that we'll do well, and I look forward to them coming in and looking at us. And I always send it with our audit page. Again, this is kept up by Jeff Whaley, who's down here. He's our IT guy who does a great job keeping up. We've now entered in this last 6 months the modern age. We're now on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and so people can follow us, our reports, and anything we put out. So they not only can send us their email, citizens or anybody can send us their email, and we'll forward anything that we put out to them via email, but if they link into us via Twitter or Facebook, they also automatically get feeds. Anything that goes onto our website, they'll get a notice that the information is out there. And this concludes my portion. If there's any questions or comments.
Any questions from the dais or comments?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Thank you for the question. You indicated that you do extensive community outreach, be with citizens and elected officials. And I know that there are roughly, I think, 38 entities that, I guess, fall under your jurisdiction. Are you an active, do you actively engage all of those 38 entities in terms of community outreach?
Yes, sir. What we try to do, at least every 6 months, we have a meeting, and we invite all city managers in. Okay. And we present best practices that we've seen over the past 6 months or so. So we have one coming up. I think we have the next one is planned next month. So we have one planned next month for both. So we have a separate meeting, one for the city managers, and then we have one for the county department heads separately too, to present best practices. So we have meetings that we invite them in, and then in addition to that, I take on my time. Of course, my office tries to get out and about, meet folks, and I personally have got a list, and I work my way down city managers that I get out and personally meet. So I don't meet with all of them within the 6 months, but over the period of time, as time permits, I've got my list, and I work my way down, and I personally go out and have met with city managers and again, county leaders, people, everybody. We oversee one-on-one myself to do that.
In the general reception, would you say that it's positive overall?
Yes, generally positive overall, and I think I jokingly have put the chart up of the grief acceptance chart. Kubler-Ross, if you remember the grief acceptance chart, of the first thing is, I think it's shock, denial, anger, negotiation, and I say this jokingly, I think we're now past those phases and in the acceptance phase of the IG, Palm Beach County. And so overall the places, I get very positive about what we're doing, and particularly a chance when I get to talk about what we're doing and my approach about we're trying to, again, first thing is help good people make government better, and that all public service, when I talk to them, it's like all of us public servants, there's a very small portion in government, in business, in education, in organized religion, in any of these fields of some people who are bad. And none of us wants those people here. And so we all work together to find them and take care of them. But overall, 98% of folks are doing good stuff, and I'm working with them to help make government better.
Another quick question. In your report, we saw the review that, for example, in Revere Beach, there were some problems, a number of problems. Does the Office of Inspector General, do you have in place any kind of specific programs where you can go in and do a general review of how, say, city government and Rivera Beach works to try to ascertain if there are any underlying structural issues that would account for the numerous issues with oversight, not oversight, but general practices?
Because the direct answer to the question is no. To go in with, again, we've got a very small organization to do this, so we send out surveys to the cities. So we do that in the sense of sending surveys out to them with questions to get responses back for them to tell us about their general strengths and weaknesses and what are their oversight issues. And we just sent one out over the past number of months to them. But going in from city to city,
assuming that you're invited by the city.
Assuming they're invited by the city. But usually we go in, when they do invite us, they ask us usually to look at a specific area. You know, like look at their contracting, or look at their purchase cards, or look at an area where they think. Sometimes we do get asked hey, could you just look at the whole city? Well, that's very difficult to do in an audit because audit, to look, that's a big, that's very big. So we really have to focus down on what we can really add. Where's the place we can add value? Best value.
So would it be fair to conclude then that a fully funded Office of Inspector General will be able to do a lot to increase trust in government? I mean, if you have more resources, you can go in and do a whole lot more to help.
We can do so much more in identifying good practices and helping people to do government better, primarily through our audit function is what we really want to grow, because that's where we can go in and they're the help business processes. So we've got a lot to help. Again, not just it's about money. I know people are looking for money and saving money, but it's also just about being more effective and being more accountable. But we can do so much better and with more folks. But in the meantime, we're going to do the best with what we have.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the dais? Yes, Commissioner Lafredo.
I'd just like to make a quick comment. I think you did a very well presented presentation, and I'd like to commend you and your staff, especially over these past 6 months. I know there's been a lot of underlying problems and whatnot, but I think you guys have come through real good, and I'd like to thank everybody for what you do, and Tallahassee's good for you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we do. Great people. Again, I think I mentioned this the last 6 months when I was here. The question was they going to get rid of everybody and bring in a new crew? And the answer was no. I did an assessment of the folks we have. We've got great people working here. And again, I learn more from them than I'm sure they learn from me every day. And again, it's a good crew of people. I've only had the opportunity to hire 3 people since I've been here and make 1 other promotion. So I've only had the opportunity to make really 4 personnel actions since I've been here. And overall, it's the base core group that folks have been working hard and continue to do good stuff.
Now that you mention that, I need to raise an issue. As you know that my seat is appointed by the majority bar, which is the Palm Beach County Bar, the Hispanic Bar, and the Cunningham Bar, which is the majority African American bar. I commend your staff, and I understand that it's great that you were able to maintain most of the staff who was here under former Inspector General Steckler. But I am concerned about the lack of diversity in terms of race relations in your office. So as you start looking at hiring other people, I asked for you to consider expanding your search towards those of other races and other backgrounds so that the office staff demographically represents that of this county.
Definitely. Thank you, ma'am. I definitely will. I've been looking at this. Right now, just to answer some question about our diversity, right now, I think we're around 40% female diversity oriented, the whole staff. Of the 6 people in supervisors we have right now, 3 are either female or minority right now. So we have 50% right now in our, with Dennis leaving. Dennis, considering he's gone out. So right now we're at 50% either of our, not senior management, but people who are supervisors level, either deputies or managers at that level.
But are any of those Hispanic, Black, Asian American, Native, any racial diversity?
Racial diversity, we have 1 female minority, not Black or Hispanic. She's a minority, but Angie's not a supervisor, but she is a senior, so who is a Black female. But she's not. She's in our senior. We consider our senior team, but she's not a supervisor. But she's on the senior team that comes at the senior manager, so she would be another minority. So, but with that said, I just could say I get the value of diversity, the value that a diverse group brings. And my last organization, Defense Intelligence Agency, outside of the Office of Equal Opportunity, mine was the most diverse staff of not only the entire staff, but people in senior leadership. So I get it. I know the value that diversity brings, and as I get those opportunities to look and search for folks, we'll take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the dais?
You got to remember that you can only hire people that apply.
Well, yes. So
Get a diverse applicants.
absolutely. So part of that process is the expansion of the search. Where's your search going? To whom are you expanding those requests for applicants? That's what I'm saying. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I do want to say, Rob, you will be missed. I've had an opportunity to meet you even before Inspector Carey came. We had Seckler, and longevity and loyalty is something very special. So, well wishes to you, and back in Tallahassee. Thank you. I also want to say welcome, Jeff, on board. Thank you. And all the best to you in your acting leadership position as audit manager. Okay. I want to say thank you to State Attorney Aaron Berg, the other elected commissioners who participated in the ethics brain bowl. I did not know about it until now, so I will definitely want to be involved in that. And thank you, Inspector General, for being involved in that as well. Ethics Month is great as a part of what we do to effectuate positive change here in the county. We do have a question here. Mr. Merriman? Please come forward.
Good morning, committee members. I'm Brad Merriman, Assistant County Administrator, and I'm here not only by myself, but I'm representing Mr. Wiseman, our County Administrator, who most of you know will be retiring in 3 months and 12 days, but who's counting? The purpose for me appearing before you today is to, on behalf of the county, which is of course the largest entity that the IG's office has jurisdiction over, to express our very strong support, not only for Mr. Carey, but for his office in general. You know, when we created the IG's office and the Commission on Ethics and the ethics ordinances some 6 years ago, we knew that there were going to be times when they were going to make reports and findings that we weren't going to be completely happy with. And that's the nature of this business. But we believe then, as we do now, that they are critical elements of good governance, transparency, and enhancing public trust. And I'm here to tell you that under Mr. Carey's leadership, this office is running pretty much the way we envisioned it. We don't always agree with their findings, We don't always agree with their conclusions. We don't always agree with their recommendations. But we are always given an opportunity to professionally and respectfully dialogue with them and respond with them. And many times our comments and our positions are very much taken into consideration when it comes to the final findings. And we do the best we can to implement as many of the recommendations that they come up with. And we found their reports to be complete, comprehensive, and again, we do appreciate the professionalism, the way that the office is run, that always gives us the opportunity to respond. So I just wanted to get those comments out there and make sure that the committee was aware of our position, and we appreciate what they're doing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? I certainly don't have any. I think that we all probably, we don't get a chance to talk to each other because we're afraid Mr. Johnson will get us a sunshine violation. But I think that I can speak that we all concur.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. New business. Any new business to discuss? I have a question under new business. Inspector General Carey, are there any new Office of Inspector General offices that are coming on the horizon in Florida that you know of?
Yes, new offices. Jacksonville County is being stood up right now. Again, Inspector General Steckler went up there to help stand that office up. So as I understand it, they have, well, I do know they put a national advertisement out for an Inspector General to come in. They've narrowed it down to a selected few candidates, I believe. So they'll be interviewing within the next month or so. And I believe the last time I spoke with her, I think they're hoping to have the Inspector General on board in July, and that office then continue moving down. So that's the office.
So basically, Palm Beach County is the lead on the charter of that particular office.
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Any public discussions on that? I don't have a public card. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.